Hello, you ready to get in the self-storage business? Today we're going to talk about construction budgets and how to involve construction as you do expansions, new build, and conversions in supporting you in getting in the self-storage business today. My name's Mark Helm. I'm the author of Creating Wealth Through Self-Storage, and I'm the creator of the Self-Storage Quick Start Academy. And what I do is I support smaller investors who want to get in the self-storage business or who want to grow their self-storage business, strategically do so in a way that creates true wealth and a fulfilling career. And we're in a series where we're talking about how you, a small investor, can actually get in or grow your self-storage business in today's way overpriced market. You can do it. I've seen people do it. We're doing it. I'm supporting other people in doing it. It can be done. You just have to know how to analyze a piece of property. And we are in the 4th episode of a series on how to do that. If this is the first you've watched, go back and watch the previous 3 episodes, so that what we're talking about today has context. What we've done so far is we've learned how to generate the income, how to determine what the income's going to be, and if you're doing an expansion, a conversion, or new construction, we've even learned how to anticipate how much and when that income's going to be coming in. Now, I get a lot of calls from people asking, well, how does the financing work on new construction, or how does the financing work if I want to build more self-storage facilities? Well, here's how it works. What happens is you design a budget. You design at first it's a pro forma, and then it turns into a construction budget, which we're going to talk about in just a little while. Then you take that to the bank and you say to the bank, this is what I want to build, this is what I want to convert, or I'm going to add this much square footage. And when we do, and we get it stabilized, here is the value of what this project's going to be. And what will happen is the bank will underwrite it at that value. The bank will go get an appraisal, and the appraiser will confirm that value, and they will loan you whatever you're getting. If it's a 75% loan, they will loan you 75% of the appraised value when it's complete and stabilized. And what happens is they'll give you enough money to either close on the land or close on the facility, and the balance of it, usually it works like this. You will make a construction draw. We do it once a month, and if you're on a 75% loan to value, the bank will give you 75% of that draw, and then you or your team puts in the other 25%. That's typically how it works. But what's critical is that you know what the value, or you're pretty confident in what the value is going to be once it's leased up and stabilized. And you can't do that on a one-sheet pro forma. Now, for many of us, including myself when I first got going in this business, the big wild card was the construction piece. Look, if I'm doing an expansion, I know what I'm paying for the existing facility. I even know how to analyze that existing facility to see what my return's going to be. I know what the income is and what it's probably going to be after I buy it. And I know what my operating expenses are probably going to be. Then I know if I add 20,000 more square feet, I can determine pretty easily, as you saw in the last few episodes, what that new income is going to be. The piece that most people who are getting in the self-storage business or wanting to grow their self-storage business today are not that comfortable with is the construction piece. Unless you have a background in construction, which, believe me, I don't have, just ask my wife. Unless you have a background in construction, this can be a daunting affair. So we've learned a process that I share with people that actually works fairly well, and we rarely are over budget. I'm not going to say I've never been over budget, but I can count on one hand, less than 3 fingers, the number of times we've ever been over budget on a construction budget. And we designed our budget fairly simply. This is not a budget that a contractor would use. But here's the good news. You're in self-storage. Self-storage is not that complicated. It's not like I'm building a 30-story hotel building. It's not like I'm building a shopping center. I'm building in most cases, a steel building with a concrete floor. There's just not that many moving pieces. You know, our numbers are from $40 on the low end to $65 a square foot on the high end construction cost. It's not that complicated a process. So there is a budget that you can click. Now, if you're watching this video anywhere but Creating Wealth Through Self-Storage, you happen to be on YouTube or someone else's blog, go to creatingwealththroughselfstorage.com, episode 106, and click the link to download this budget template that we use. Literally, we use this budget template to, first of all, estimate what we think the construction numbers are going to be. Then, once we get our hard numbers, we replace our estimates with full numbers, and literally this is what our balance sheets look like. You know, we have the lines collapsed. It'll say self-storage construction cost, and if you expand it, then these numbers and these line items are in this particular budget literally show up on our balance sheet. Soft costs, we have a number for soft costs on the balance sheet. Click it, it expands out, and all of the soft cost numbers are there. This is how, as an investor, we track our costs. So let me give you a brief overview of the construction process. The very first piece will be the site work. So what happens is bulldozers come in and move dirt from one end to the other, or you bring more dirt in and fill it up, or you take trees down. You get the site to whatever level in grade that the engineer calls for, who's doing the site work plans. In our world, that's the biggest wild card. That's the one I feel the weakest on. I never know what the site work's going to be. Sometimes I'll literally, before I even put it under contract, I'll get a site work contractor out there or talk to somebody who knows about it. And we've done a few now, so I can go back and look at other costs that we've had, and the site looks fairly similar. But I've gone as little as $13,000 on a half-acre site up to $1 million on a 5-acre site. So you get the site work done. Now, if you go to the class in the Self-Storage Quick Start Academy, how to build your first self-storage facility, you'll see that I'm a big advocate of using self-storage systems fabricators, companies that fabricate the self-storage facility for you. I like them because they provide so many other ancillary services, and their cost per square foot is so much less expensive than anything else you're going to get. And people who are in the industry would much rather buy, when it's your turn to sell, they would much rather buy a building made from a Bedco or a Track-T or a Mako, one of the main storage fabricators. They would much rather buy that facility than something that's a contractor built, that's a stick build facility. So there's a lot of benefit in using these storage systems fabricators. Literally, they will lay it out for us. I take that layout to our engineer. They do the site work costs and run it through the approval process. Then we get the site work done. Then the system fabricator delivers the system. Part of the site work is the concrete pads are poured. Then we use either the company that manufactures it or approved erectors that manufacturing company approves of to put the buildings up. Then what you have left is you've got electric, you've got fencing to go up, you got gates to go in. If you got cameras, there's security features to go in. If you're building a bathroom, adding a bathroom, you've got some plumbing work. And if it's climate controlled, you've got HVAC. That's about it. That's about as complicated as self-storage gets. Now, once you get familiar with the range of numbers, and there's not that many numbers to get familiar with, once you get familiar with the range of numbers, I'm not saying you can be the general contractor or you can even be the construction manager, but it's not that complicated. You can work. We use construction managers quite often, and we advise and literally drive the process for the construction managers. The people I'm working with that are in the Self-Storage Quick Start Academy, they are too. They tell their construction managers, this is the systems that we're going to use. Get bids from these 3 manufacturers. Here's what I'm looking for from the electrician. I want these lights every so many doors on the outside. You will be driving the bus. Even if you're not functioning as a GC or a construction manager, you should still be in charge. Why? Because it's very easy to let a construction project get out of hand. And it doesn't have to be an expensive, overwhelming project. So here's a sample of a construction templated budget. Well, here is a template of a budget that we use. Basically, we divide the project into the self-storage component, exterior component, and office component. And then as you'll see, we add soft cost and then come up with a number. And here's a sample of a pro forma budget that we did on an expansion. Well, you'll see under the self-storage part, we budgeted $10.75 per square foot for the material, and we budgeted $4.50 a square foot to erect it. And we, at that time, were using a $5.50 a square foot number for the concrete. Then you add the other security, HVAC. We always use a 10% contingency. Then as you start to get down into the exterior portion, you'll see we plugged in for signage, fencing, gates. These are kind of the numbers that we were using at the time. We always use a 10% contingency in every section. And what we're finding is that, this was probably, I don't remember exactly, this was probably in the low 50s when all was said and done on this project, maybe the high 40s. In this particular one, you'll see we budgeted a lot more for the engineer than we did for the architect. We also always get our own builder's risk insurance, and the developer fee and or construction management fee on this project, we were charging 9%, and you will see that this came in at almost $49 a square foot, or $48.50 a square foot projected cost. And that's very typical of a one-story, single-story, suburban style expansion that we do. Architects, who usually play a big role in most construction projects, actually play, in most cases, a minor role in the self-storage process. Yes, if I'm building a 3 or 4 story building, they're going to play a much bigger role. Yes, if I'm building an office, building separate, like retail office building, I'll have the architects design that building, inspect that building. But for us, 9 times out of 10, it's the systems fabricator that deliver the stamped building plans to us in whatever state we're in. It's the systems fabricators that deliver the stamped concrete specs in whatever state we're in. And it's the engineer that creates the site work paper and plans in whatever municipality that we're in. Usually, we're relying on architects to design the office building and create a rendering for the approval. That's about it for us in most cases, using architect. So these numbers don't have to be very big. You've seen examples of numbers we've projected on expansions, and I'm telling you the final numbers, the line items may be different, but they're usually not that far off. Now, don't use the numbers that you see in our pro forma. Whenever you're doing yours, steel prices may have changed, labor costs may have changed. Depending on where you're getting the concrete from, that may have changed. Very often the numbers will go down. So don't use these numbers, but I put it on there so you can begin to see a range. What we see is, for most single-story self-storage projects, $40 on the low end, and you can go cheaper, but Usually it's about, for a good product, 40 on the low end, 40 to 45, and then 65 on the high end. There have been projects that are more expensive, and there's been projects that are less. But that's kind of the range per square foot to construct new storage. Obviously, the larger your building tends to weigh towards the lower end per square foot. The smaller you're adding tends to weigh to the higher end per square foot. Now what happens is, if you're doing an expansion, your total cost in the project is your acquisition cost plus your construction budget. You add those two together. If you're buying for $1 million and it costs you another $1 million to add, your cost in the project is $2 million. If the day that you get the stabilized occupancy, the project's worth 3.5, you created $1.5 million in value for adding that additional square footage and going through the process of leasing it up and taking the risk to do it. Now what you do is you will estimate what you're going to buy it for, estimate what the construction costs are, put it in the pro forma, run the numbers, run the lease up as we discussed in last week's episode, and if the returns look good and if it hits your business strategy, you attempt to put the property or the land under contract. Then, in the due diligence period, your relationship to it is you're replacing all of these estimated numbers on the construction budget with real numbers as much as possible. Then, you rerun the pro forma, and if it still meets your expectations or allows you to hit your goal, you close on it. If it doesn't, you let the property go and go to the next one that you have under contract. If you want to get in the self-storage business today, that's the way to do it. Now, there's a lot of resources out there that can support you in this. Inside Self-Storage has a lot of resources on construction, where you can get average construction numbers and processes. And if you go to the convention, you will meet all kinds of people who can build the self-storage buildings for you or support you in building it. Self-storage associations, same thing, all kinds of resources there to support you. All types of people you can meet that will help you understand it. And again, the Quick Start Academy has a lot of training on this. The forms that we use, the processes that we use to do this business are all there on the Quick Start Academy. And I'm continually updating it. And again, episode 106, Creating Wealth Through Self-Storage, under the blogs, you can download our pro forma construction budget template, and you can see an actual expansion pro forma that we created on a project that we've completed. Now, I'm not going to talk about what type of loan. There's other series at Creating Wealth Through Self-Storage that can help you with that. But now you know. Land or acquisition costs, construction budget, that's your total cost in, value when it's completed and stabilized, that's what they will loan on. Whatever loan you get, you now know how to determine the value that it's going to be appraised at. Next week, to begin to complete this series of episodes on analysis, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about some operating expenses and how to analyze the long-term cash flows, how to potentially predict very accurately the future cash flows of a project that you're building, expanding, or converting, or even an existing one that you've bought. And the good news is it's self-storage. No other asset, as you will see next week, no other asset allows you to predict future cash flows as accurately as this one does. We'll show you why, we'll show you how to do it, and we'll show you how we and the other students in the Quick Start Academy are doing it. So thank you very much. If you're seeing this before April 9th, 2017, which is only a few days from now, I hope that you will be at the Inside Self-Storage Convention in the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. I will be there. I will be at booth 527. Stop by and say hello. I'll also be running a class going over much of what we're covering here in a little more detail, how to buy self-storage in today's crazy market, and we'll go into a little more detail, and I hope to see you there. If you see me, come up and say hello. And at the Inside Self-Storage Convention, I am going to be demonstrating and showing for the first time the upgraded version of the Storage World Analyzer. That's the self-storage financial analysis tool that we use and many of the students we work with use, and it is an affordable, effective way to analyze self-storage. So I hope to see you there. If you see me, stop and say hello. My name is Mark Helm. I'm the author of Creating Wealth Through Self-Storage, and I'm the creator of the Storage World Analyzer. See you later.